The eviction notice disintegrated in the freezing rain, ink bleeding across the cheap paper like tears. But Mr. Alistair Grind didn't care about the notice. He cared about the profit margin. Out. Now. The landlord's voice cut through the storm as he stood beneath his pristine golf umbrella, his Italian leather shoes somehow still spotless despite the downpour. Meanwhile, Clara Evans huddled on the curb, her body wrapped around her 1-year-old son Toby like a human shield against the elements. I told you, Ms. Evans. This is business, not charity. You're 48 hours late on rent. Please, Clara begged, her voice breaking as Toby's feverish whimpers turned into full-throated wails. Rain plastered her hair to her face, mixing with tears she was too proud to acknowledge. Just one more night. Look at this storm. My baby has a fever. I have the money. I get paid tomorrow morning, I swear. Not my problem. Grind punctuated his dismissal by kicking a sodden teddy bear into a puddle, watching it sink with satisfaction. The new tenants are moving in tomorrow. Young professionals. They're paying triple what you do, and they don't come with baggage. His eyes flicked dismissively toward Toby. Move your trash, or I call the police for trespassing. Clara sobbed, clutching the dripping bear to her chest alongside her crying child. She looked down the dark, empty street of the rundown neighborhood, praying for anyone, anything. The pavement began to vibrate. At first, she thought it was thunder. But the rumble grew deeper, more mechanical, and the puddles at her feet rippled in concentric circles like something out of Jurassic Park. Around the corner, a single headlight pierced the deluge like a lighthouse cutting through fog. Then another, and another. 20 motorcycles, black as midnight and loud as approaching war, rolled to a stop in perfect formation directly in front of the shivering mother and child. The lead rider killed his engine. In the sudden silence, broken only by rain hammering on leather and chrome, he slowly removed his helmet. Water streamed down a face that could have been carved from granite, sharp jaw, scarred eyebrow, eyes the color of storm clouds. Jackson King, Sterling didn't look at the landlord. His gaze locked onto the baby trembling in Clara's arms, taking in the fever-flushed cheeks and the way the mother was using her own body as an umbrella. When he finally spoke, his voice was so low and dangerous that even the rain seemed to quiet. You kicked a baby out in this weather? Grind's umbrella trembled. This is private property. You can't. Big mistake, Jax continued, as if the landlord hadn't spoken. He swung off his bike, his massive frame unfolding to its full 6'4" height. Behind him, 19 more riders dismounted in synchronized silence. Really big fucking mistake. 30 minutes earlier, Clara had still believed in mercy. She'd believed that if she explained her situation clearly enough, rationally enough, Mr. Grind would understand. Her library position had been eliminated in budget cuts. She'd found new work, a waitressing job that started next week, but there was a gap. Just 48 hours. 2 days between paychecks. She believed that 2 days wouldn't matter to a man who owned 17 properties across the city. She'd been wrong. Rules are rules, Ms. Evans, Grind had said from the doorway of her basement apartment, staying carefully on the threshold to avoid the black mold growing in the corners. He'd never fixed that, despite her repeated requests. Never fixed the leaking pipes, the broken heating, the windows that wouldn't close properly. But he'd never missed a rent collection day. If I make an exception for you, I'll have to make exceptions for everyone. Mr. Grind, please, she tried to show him Toby, swaddled in every blanket she owned, his forehead hot enough to feel through the fabric. My son is sick. I can't take him out in this storm. The clinic said to keep him warm and dry. Then you should have paid your rent on time. He'd glanced at his Rolex. The real thing, not a knockoff, Clara had noticed bitterly. 1 month of her rent could probably buy that watch. You have 1 hour to vacate. I'm showing the unit to new tenants at 7 o'clock. It's 5:30, and it's pouring rain. Not my problem. 1 hour, or I call the police. That had been 30 minutes ago. Clara had packed what she could, Toby's clothes, diapers, formula, a few of her own belongings, into the 2 battered suitcases she'd bought at Goodwill. Everything else, her second-hand furniture and kitchenware, sat in a pathetic pile on the curb, getting soaked. The apartment had been furnished when she'd moved in, such as it was. She had nothing of value except what fit in those suitcases, and nowhere to go. The homeless shelter was full, she'd called. Her parents were dead. She had no siblings, no close friends in the city. She'd moved here for the library job, and in her 2 years of working 60-hour weeks to afford rent and childcare, she hadn't exactly built a social network. So she sat on the curb in the rain, holding her feverish baby, and watched her landlord pace impatiently under his umbrella, checking his watch every 30 seconds. "Time's up," Grind announced with evident satisfaction. "I'm calling the police." "Wait. Please, just let me call." "But who? Who could she call?" Grind was already dialing. "Yes, police. I have a trespasser refusing to leave my property. Very aggressive. I feel threatened." He locked eyes with Clara as he lied. "Please send someone immediately." That's when Clara broke. She'd been holding it together for Toby's sake, staying strong, staying calm. But something in the casual cruelty of that lie, painting her as the aggressor when she was sitting soaked and desperate with a sick baby, shattered her last defense. She bent over Toby and sobbed. Not quiet tears, but huge, body-racking sobs that she couldn't control. Everything she'd been holding back for months, the job loss, the poverty, the constant fear, the exhaustion of being a single mother with no support, came pouring out into the storm. Grind watched with undisguised disgust. Pathetic. He kicked her son's teddy bear into a puddle. That bear had been a gift from her mother, 6 months before she died. The last present Clara had from her. Toby slept with it every night. Clara watched it sink into the muddy water, and something in her chest went cold and hollow. "You're a monster," she whispered. "I'm a businessman," Grind corrected. "There's a difference. One makes money." He glanced up the street. Here come my 7 o'clock appointments now. Right on time. You see? That's the kind of tenants I want. Punctual. Professional." A Mercedes was pulling up to the curb. Clara looked down at Toby, at his flushed face and the way he'd finally cried himself into an exhausted silence, and she wondered how she was going to protect him, where they would sleep tonight, how she would keep him warm and dry. She closed her eyes and prayed. She wasn't religious, but desperation makes believers of us all. Please send help. Anyone. Anything." That's when the pavement started to shake. The first motorcycle was a work of art. A custom Harley-Davidson with a matte black finish and chrome details that caught the streetlight like captured lightning. But Clara barely noticed the machine. She was fixated on the man riding it. He was huge. Even seated, his presence filled the space. Broad shoulders stretched his leather jacket tight. Tattooed hands gripped the handlebars with the easy confidence of someone who'd been riding longer than most people had been alive. When he killed the engine and removed his helmet, Clara saw a face that belonged on a movie screen. If that movie was about beautiful, dangerous men who broke rules and hearts in equal measure. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Storm gray and intense, they swept the scene with tactical precision. The sodden furniture, the terrified mother, the sick baby, the smug landlord. In 2 seconds, he'd assessed everything. His jaw tightened. "Boss." One of the other riders, a man so large his road name was probably something ironic like Tiny, rumbled a question. "This the place?" "Yeah." Jax's voice was quiet, but it carried. "This is it." They'd been riding back from a legitimate business meeting. Jax had been consulting on security systems for a new condo development downtown, when Jax's phone had pinged with a property alert. He owned a portfolio of investments across the city, monitored through various apps and services. One of those services tracked rental disputes in low-income neighborhoods, flagging potential acquisition opportunities. The property at 423 Maple Street had pinged. Tenant dispute. Eviction in progress. Jax had almost ignored it. He had people who handled acquisitions. But something made him check the details. Single mother. Infant. Medical emergency. Landlord. Alastair Grind. He knew that name. Grind was a slumlord who'd been dodging building code violations for years through a combination of bribery and legal loopholes. Jax had crossed paths with him once before, at a property auction. Grind had made a crude comment about cleaning out the trash from a building he'd just purchased. The trash in question had been elderly residents on fixed incomes. Jax had outbid him on that property out of spite, then renovated it into affordable senior housing. Grind had been pissed. Seeing his name attached to this eviction made something cold and sharp form in Jax's chest. "Tiny, Reaper, Snake, you're with me. Rest of you, perimeter. And someone get an umbrella for the lady." Jax swung off his bike, his boots hitting the wet pavement with a solid thud that seemed to echo despite the rain. He walked toward Clara with measured steps, ignoring Grind entirely. When he reached her, he did something that made her blink in confusion. He shrugged out of his leather cut, the vest that marked him as president of the Obsidian King's MC, and draped it over her and Toby like a blanket. It was still warm from his body heat and smelled like leather and rain and something darker, like whiskey and smoke. "You're going to be okay," he told her. Not a question, a statement of fact. Then he turned to face the landlord. Grind had been backing toward his Mercedes, his earlier confidence evaporating as 20 bikers formed a semicircle around him. "This is private property. You're trespassing. I've already called the police." "Good." Jax pulled out his phone. "I'll call them too. Report a few building code violations while we're at it." "How's the ventilation system in that basement unit, Grind? Asbestos properly sealed? Mold remediation up to date? Fire exits clearly marked and accessible?" Grind's face went pale. "You can't. I already did. City Inspector's office received an anonymous tip about 45 minutes ago. Funny timing." Jack smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "They're sending someone Monday morning. Hope your paperwork's in order." It wasn't. They both knew it. "Who the fuck are you?" Grind demanded, trying to reclaim some authority. "Nobody important. Just a concerned citizen." Jax glanced at the Mercedes couple, who were watching from their car with wide eyes. "You folks might want to check the inspection history before you sign any lease. Just friendly advice." The Mercedes reversed and drove away. Grind's face went from pale to purple. "Do you have any idea how much money you just cost me?" "Not enough." Jax turned back to Clara. "Ma'am, I apologize for the intrusion, but I couldn't help noticing you're having a housing emergency. My associates and I would be happy to assist with relocation." Clara stared at him, still clutching Toby and his cut. I don't understand. We're going to help you move." "Move where?" "I don't have anywhere to." "You do now?" Jax's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and nodded, satisfied. "My people just secured you accommodations. Climate-controlled, fully furnished, move-in ready." "I can't afford." "It's handled. I don't accept charity." For the first time, Jax's expression softened into something almost like respect. "It's not charity. It's justice. There's a difference." He gestured to Tiny, who approached with surprising gentleness for a man who looked like he could bench press a car. "This is my associate. He's going to help pack your belongings. Where would you like to sit while we work? Inside the Mercedes?" "I don't. This is too much. Your baby's sick." Jax's voice went quiet again, that dangerous quiet. "He needs to be somewhere warm and dry. Let us help. You can argue with me about it later, after he's been seen by a doctor." Clara looked down at Toby, whose fever had spiked enough that he was limp and glassy-eyed in her arms. She looked at the strangers offering help. She looked at Grind, who was dialing frantically on his phone, probably trying to reach his lawyer. She made a decision. Okay. The Obsidian King's MC moved with the efficiency of a military operation. Within minutes, they'd assessed Clara's belongings, organized them by priority, and begun loading everything into a support van that materialized from somewhere. Tiny handled Clara's worn sofa like it was made of spun glass. "This is a nice piece, ma'am," he said seriously, examining the sagging cushions and broken leg. "Mid-century design. They don't make them like this anymore." Clara almost laughed. The sofa was a $30 Craigslist find that she'd been planning to replace as soon as she could afford to. But Tiny's genuine respect for her meager possessions made something in her chest tighten. Another rider, his cut said Reaper, which should have been terrifying but somehow wasn't, was carefully packing her kitchen items. "You want the coffee maker?" he called. "It's broken," Clara admitted. "I can fix it." Good brands are worth saving. A third man, introduced as Snake, was disconnecting her ancient television. "This still work?" "Sometimes. I know a guy. He can get you a better one. But we'll bring this for now, in case you're attached." She was. It had been her mother's. Through it all, Jack stood beside Clara's position in the support van. He'd insisted she sit inside with Toby, out of the rain, and orchestrated the operation via quiet commands and hand signals. He draped his leather jacket over her shoulders when she tried to return the cut, and now he stood in just his black t-shirt, seemingly unbothered by the cold rain. Grind watched the proceedings with mounting horror. "You can't just steal her property." "We're not stealing anything," Jax replied calmly. We're helping a citizen exercise her right to retrieve her personal belongings from a premises she's been unlawfully evicted from. It's not unlawful. She didn't pay rent. 48 hours late during a medical emergency, with payment guaranteed within 12 hours? Yeah, a judge would call that unlawful. Especially given your failure to maintain habitable conditions. That mold in the bathroom. Health hazard. The broken heating system you've been meaning to fix for 6 months? Violation of implied warranty of habitability. Want me to keep going? Grind's mouth opened and closed like a fish. That's what I thought. Jax checked his watch. We'll be out of your hair in 10 minutes. Oh, and Grind. One more thing. What? I'm going to come back. Soon. And we're going to have a conversation about fire safety in your properties. Building capacity. Emergency exits. All those boring regulations you've been ignoring. Jax smiled, and it was terrifying. I'm very interested in making sure all your properties are up to code. Very interested. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Grind stumbled backward, slipped on the wet pavement, and fell directly into the puddle containing Toby's teddy bear. When he scrambled up, sputtering and muddy, he found Jax standing over him. Oh, and you dropped something. Jax retrieved the sodden bear, wrung it out gently, and handed it to Clara. We'll get this cleaned up. Good as new. Then he walked away, leaving Grind sitting in the gutter. Within 15 minutes, everything Clara owned was loaded. The riders mounted their bikes in synchronized precision. Jax appeared at the van's passenger window, rain dripping from his hair. You comfortable? Baby secure, Clara nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Good. Follow the convoy. We've got about a 20-minute ride. Where are we going? She managed. Somewhere safe. Somewhere dry. Somewhere that scumbag will never find you. He paused, then added more gently. Somewhere you can breathe. He returned to his bike, kicked it to life, and the entire convoy rolled out in formation, leaving Alistair Grind standing alone in the rain, soaked to the skin, watching his easy profit drive away on 20 motorcycles. Clara had never been in a motorcycle convoy before. The experience was surreal. The van she rode in was sandwiched between bikes in front and behind, creating a protective cocoon. Through the rain-streaked windows, she watched the city transform. They left her crumbling neighborhood, passing boarded-up shops and chain-link fences. The van hummed steadily, its heater finally taking the chill from Toby's skin. He'd stopped crying and now dozed fitfully in the car seat the club had somehow produced. Brand new, still in the box, exactly the right size. How did you have this? She'd asked Tiny when he'd installed it. Boss keeps emergency supplies, he'd replied, as if that were normal. Never know when you'll need baby gear. The convoy moved through downtown, past the gleaming office buildings and trendy restaurants where Clara had once brought her mother for her last birthday. Past the library where she'd worked, its windows dark now on a Saturday evening. Past the cafe where she'd gotten the news about her position being eliminated. Then they started climbing. The road narrowed, winding upward into the hills that overlooked the city. The rain made the views blur into watercolor streaks of light and shadow. Expensive cars passed them going the opposite direction, Mercedes, Teslas, a Bentley. The houses visible from the road went from large to enormous, from nice to mansion. Clara's chest tightened with each mile. Excuse me, she called to the driver, a quiet man whose cut read Phantom. Yeah. I think there's been a mistake. I can't afford anything up here. I was thinking maybe a motel, or... Not a mistake. But this is where rich people live. Phantom glanced at her in the rearview mirror, something like amusement in his eyes. Yep. I don't understand. You will. The convoy turned off the main road onto a private drive marked only by a subtle bronze plaque. Private property. No trespassing. Iron gates opened automatically as the lead bike approached, then closed smoothly behind the last vehicle. The driveway wound through old-growth trees, the kind that cost a fortune to maintain. Landscape lighting illuminated a path that looked like something from a magazine spread. Clara's hands started shaking. This is wrong. This has to be wrong. Did we break into someone's? The trees opened up. The house before them wasn't a house. It was an architectural statement. All glass and steel and dark stone, cantilevered over the hillside like a spaceship that had landed on the cliff's edge. Floor-to-ceiling windows glowed with warm light. A waterfall feature cascaded down the front facade into a reflecting pool. The garage alone was larger than Grind's entire building. "Oh my God," Clara whispered. "What have you people done? Who does this belong to?" The convoy came to a stop. Jax appeared at the van door, opening it for her. Rain had plastered his dark hair to his skull, making him look even more dangerous, but his hands were gentle as he reached for Toby's car seat. "I'll get him. You grab your purse." "Jax, whose house is this?" "Mine." She laughed. It was a slightly hysterical sound. "That's not funny." "Not joking." He freed the car seat and headed toward the house. "Come on. It's dry inside." Clara scrambled after him, slipping on the wet stone pathway. Tiny caught her elbow, steadying her. "Careful, ma'am. These pavers get slick. This can't be his house. You're bikers. You live in, I don't know, warehouses? Clubhouses." "We have a clubhouse," Tiny agreed. "It's in the city. Boss has this too." "How?" Tiny grinned. "He's good at math." They reached the entrance, where Jax was pressing his thumb against a biometric scanner. The massive front door, with that looked like it had been carved by master craftsmen, swung open silently. "Welcome to the clubhouse, darling," Jax said, carrying Toby inside. "Or as the IRS calls it, my primary residence." Clara stepped into the foyer and stopped breathing. The interior opened up into a 3-story atrium with a floating staircase that seemed to defy physics. Original artwork hung on the walls, not prints, originals. The floor was polished concrete and heated. She could feel warmth radiating through her wet shoes. Beyond the entrance, the house opened into a great room with those impossible floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights below. "This isn't real," she said faintly. "It's very real. Cost me $8.3 million, not including renovations." Jack set Toby's carrier on a leather sofa that probably cost more than Clara's car. "East Wing has guest suites. Pick whichever one you want. They're all furnished." "I can't." "You can. You need somewhere to stay." "I have room. Math's pretty simple." He shrugged out of his soaked t-shirt unself-consciously, revealing a torso covered in intricate tattoos and scars that suggested a complicated history. "Make yourself at home. Kitchen's through there. Help yourself to anything. I'm going to grab a shower." He started walking away, then paused and turned back. "Oh, and Clara? There's no rent. No expectations. Stay as long as you need. This place is too big for one person anyway." Then he disappeared up the floating staircase, leaving Clara standing in an $8 million foyer, holding a baby and wondering if she'd fallen asleep in the rain and was currently hallucinating. Behind her, the Obsidian Kings were efficiently unloading her belongings, treating her second-hand furniture with the same care they'd use for priceless antiques. "Where do you want the sofa, ma'am?" Tiny asked. Clara looked at him, looked at the house, looked at Toby sleeping peacefully for the first time in hours. She started crying again, but this time, they were different tears entirely. The guest suite Jax showed her to after his shower was larger than her entire previous apartment. A California king bed dominated the space, dressed in what had to be 1,000 thread-count linens. An en-suite bathroom featured a rainfall shower and a soaking tub. A walk-in closet stood empty, waiting. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Jax apparently had a thing for dramatic views. Overlooked the infinity pool and the city beyond. "Nurseries through that door," Jax said, pointing to a connecting room Clara hadn't noticed. "I had it set up when my sister visited with her kids last year. There's a crib, changing table, whatever you need. If something's missing, let me know." Clara walked into the nursery and found it decorated in soft grays and whites, with a crib that converted to a toddler bed, a glider rocker, and enough storage for a small army of babies. A white noise machine sat on the dresser. Blackout curtains could block the view when needed. "This is insane," she said. "This is furniture." Jax leaned against the doorframe, now dressed in dry clothes, black jeans, and a black Henley that did nothing to make him less intimidating. "You're acting like I'm offering you a kidney. This is worth more than a kidney. The guest suite or the whole house?" "Both." He smiled slightly. "Perspective's funny. To you, this is insane wealth. To me, it's just where I sleep. Neither of us is wrong." Clara set Toby, still sleeping. Finally, his fever broken by children's Tylenol Jax had produced from an extensively stocked medicine cabinet. In the crib, she watched her son's chest rise and fall, then turned to face this strange biker who apparently lived like a tech mogul. "Who are you really?" "Jackson Sterling. Most people call me King or Jax. That's not what I mean." How does the president of a motorcycle club afford this? Jax considered her for a moment, then gestured toward the door. Come on. I'll make coffee and explain. If you're going to be staying here, you should know who you're staying with. They went downstairs to a kitchen that belonged in a celebrity chef's Instagram. Jax moved through it with easy familiarity, starting an espresso machine that probably cost more than Clara's car. My dad was in the club, he began. Original member. He raised me in that life. Bikes, brotherhood, all of it. But he had a straight job too. Structural engineer. Smart guy. Made good money, saved it, invested it. When he died, I inherited his portfolio. Couple $100,000 in various stocks and bonds. He handed her a perfect cappuccino. Clara had no idea how he'd made the foam art, a leaf design, but it was beautiful. I was 22, angry at the world, didn't want his money. Almost gave it all away. But my uncle, he was in the club too. He said, your dad spent 30 years building that for you. Don't disrespect his work. So I kept it. And I started learning about investing. Jax made his own coffee, black, no sugar, and leaned against the counter. Turns out I'm good at it. Really good. I got into cryptocurrency early, 2011, when Bitcoin was pennies. Bought a bunch as a gamble. Forgot about it for a few years. When I finally checked, that couple $100,000 had turned into a couple million. Clara's eyes widened. That was my first lucky break. But luck doesn't stay lucky unless you're smart. I educated myself. Finance, economics, real estate. I took that couple million and diversified. Real estate during the 2012 crash. Tech stocks. More crypto. Some traditional blue chips. By the time I was 30, I had my first 100 million. Now, he shrugged. Let's just say I don't worry about money. Then why the motorcycle club? Why the leather and the... Clara gestured vaguely at his tattooed arms. Because that's who I am. The money came later. The club is family. It's home. It's the only thing that stayed real when everything else started getting complicated. He met her eyes. I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. I'm exactly who I look like. A biker who happens to be good at math. Both things are true. Clara sipped her coffee, processing. And you just what? Rescue random people in the rain? Not usually. But when I saw that situation tonight, saw him kick your kid's toy into the gutter, saw you sitting there in the storm with a sick baby, I had a choice. I could ride away, let the system handle it. Or I could do something. His expression hardened. I chose to do something. And I'm going to keep doing something until that slumlord learns what happens when you kick people at their lowest. What are you going to do to him? Jax's smile was sharp and cold. Nothing illegal. But Alistair Grind is about to learn that being a bully only works when you're the biggest person in the room. And he's not. Not anymore. The first morning in the glass fortress, Clara woke disoriented. The bed was too soft. The room was too quiet. The view through the windows was too beautiful. For a panicked moment, she thought she'd dreamed everything. The eviction, the bikers, the mansion. Then Toby made a small sound from the nursery, and she remembered. She stumbled into the nursery to find Jax already there, holding her son and looking out the window at the sunrise. He'd clearly been up for a while. He was showered and dressed, coffee cup in his free hand. Morning, he said quietly. He was fussing. Didn't want to wake you. Hope that's okay. Clara stared at the sight of this tattooed biker gang leader, gently bouncing her baby, while drinking artisanal coffee and watching the sunrise over his $8 million view. I've had an insane dream, she said. Probably not a dream. Then I've lost my mind. Also possible. Jax handed her Toby, who was clearly feeling better. The fever had broken completely, and he was babbling happily. There's breakfast in the kitchen. Tiny's here. He likes to cook. Tiny's here? It's 6 a.m. on a Sunday. He's an early riser. Also, he wanted to make sure you had proper food. He's very concerned about nutrition. This was how Clara found herself eating the best omelet of her life at a kitchen island, while a 6'6" biker named Tiny discussed the importance of organic vegetables and locally sourced eggs. Jack sat across from her, reading something on a tablet and occasionally interjecting comments about stock prices. It was surreal. Over the next few days, the surrealism continued. Clara tried to contribute, to clean, to cook, to do something to earn her keep. But the house had a cleaning service that came twice a week. The kitchen restocked itself via some kind of automated grocery delivery that seemed to know what was needed before anyone did. Jax worked from a home office filled with multiple monitors, handling investments and business deals with casual efficiency. The Obsidian Kings came and went. They treated the mansion like a second clubhouse, but they also treated Clara like visiting royalty. Snake fixed her coffee maker and brought her a new television, not the one she'd asked for, but a massive smart TV that he installed in her suite, in case she wanted privacy. Reaper brought toys for Toby, claiming his own kids had outgrown them, though Clara suspected he'd bought them new. And Jax was a puzzle. During the day, he was all business, ruthless, efficient, clearly running an empire from behind his screens. But in the evenings, when Toby was awake, he'd appear from his office and ask if Clara needed anything. He'd hold the baby while she showered. He'd make dinner, actually cook, and cook well, and they'd eat together, talking about everything except the absurdity of their situation. Clara learned that he'd bought this house 5 years ago as an investment, then realized he actually liked living in it. That his mother had died when he was young, so his father had raised him. That the Obsidian King's MC was completely legitimate. They ran security consulting and owned several businesses, with the club operating as both brotherhood and professional network. We're not outlaws, Jax explained one evening while Clara fed Toby. We're incorporated. We pay taxes. We just happen to ride motorcycles, and we're leather. People see the bikes and the tats and assume we're criminals. We let them think it. It's useful. Useful how? People underestimate you. They negotiate from a position of assumed superiority. Then you take everything they have, and they never see it coming. He smiled. Like with grind. Clara's stomach tightened. What are you doing about grind? Due diligence. Research. Legal preparation. Jax's expression went cold. By the time I'm done, he'll wish he'd been nicer to you. Jax, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. There's a difference. On her 5th day in the mansion, Clara woke to find a manila envelope on the kitchen counter with her name on it. Inside was a job offer, a position as a private librarian and research assistant for Sterling Holdings, LLC. Salary, $85,000 per year, plus benefits, with flexible hours and the option to work remotely. She found Jax in his office. What is this? Job offer. You said you didn't want charity. This is employment. Sterling Holdings is my investment firm. I need someone to organize my research, manage my reference library, handle information gathering. You're qualified. I'm offering. You can accept or decline. This is charity with extra steps. This is me offering you a legitimate position doing work I actually need done. The salary's market rate for corporate research positions. The flexible hours are because I assume you want to take care of your kid. The remote work option is because I literally don't care where you do the job, as long as it gets done. He looked up from his screens. But if you'd rather go back to looking for waitressing gigs, that's your call. Clara stared at the offer letter. $85,000. Benefits. Flexible hours. The ability to work from home or from this mansion while caring for Toby. I accept, she said. Jax nodded and returned to his work. Good. You start Monday. Your first assignment is researching property management companies in the metropolitan area, specifically their regulatory compliance histories. Focus on building code violations, tenant lawsuits, and patterns of negligence. Why? His smile was razor-sharp. Because I'm shopping for new acquisitions. And Alistair Grind just made my list. Alistair Grind was having the worst week of his life. First, that incident with the trashy single mother and the biker gang. He'd reported it to the police, of course, claiming he'd been threatened and intimidated. The cops had taken his statement, looked bored, and promised to look into it. Nothing had happened. Then the building inspector showed up Monday morning. Grind had tried to charm him, to explain that the anonymous tip was obviously from a disgruntled former tenant, someone with an axe to grind. He always enjoyed that pun. The inspector didn't care. He'd gone through every property Grind owned with a fine-tooth comb. The violations list was 17 pages long. Mold remediation required. HVAC systems non-compliant. Fire exits blocked. Asbestos not properly sealed. Electrical work done without permits. Plumbing issues. Structural concerns. The inspector had been thorough, methodical, and completely immune to Grind's attempts at bribery. Fix these issues within 30 days, or we'll condemn the buildings, the inspector had said. And FYI, I'm recommending the city attorney's office review your business practices. This mini violation suggests a pattern of willful negligence. The repairs would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. Money Grind didn't have, because he'd been leveraging his properties to buy more properties, using rental income to service debt. His entire business model depended on spending nothing on maintenance and collecting maximum rent. He couldn't afford to fix everything, but he couldn't afford to have the buildings condemned either. Then his lawyer called with more bad news. 6 of his former tenants had filed a class action lawsuit for inhabitable living conditions. Someone had been calling around, informing people of their rights, encouraging them to seek legal representation. That same someone had apparently connected them with a law firm that specialized in tenant rights and worked on contingency. Who's doing this? Grind demanded. Who's organizing against me? We don't know, his lawyer admitted. But whoever it is has money and connections. This law firm doesn't take small cases. Someone with deep pockets is backing this. Grind thought about the biker. The one with the cold eyes and the quiet voice. The one who'd promised to come back. No. Impossible. Bikers didn't have money or connections. They were thugs. Criminals. They didn't file lawsuits and hire building inspectors. Did they? To make matters worse, the new tenants he'd been counting on, the young professionals willing to pay triple rent, had backed out. They'd cited concerns about the property's regulatory status and requested their deposit back. When Grind refused, they'd threatened legal action. He'd given them the deposit. By Wednesday, 3 more tenant families had given notice. They'd found better accommodations, they said. Cheaper rent, better conditions. When Grind drove by those better accommodations, he found newly renovated units in buildings he recognized as former slum properties. Someone had bought them, fixed them up, and was renting them for below-market rates. Someone was systematically destroying his business. On Thursday, the bank called. Grind had 5 properties mortgaged through them, and they were concerned about recent developments. They wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss his loan portfolio and ensure adequate collateral value. That's when Grind decided to go public. He called every local news station, every newspaper, claiming he was a small businessman being targeted by organized crime. He described the biker gang, the intimidation, the systematic harassment. He painted himself as a victim of extortion and criminal conspiracy. One station bid. A local news reporter known for sensational stories. They agreed to interview Grind for their evening segment. Local landlord claims biker gang harassment. The headline would read. Grind smiled. Finally, he'd turn this around. Public sympathy would be on his side. The police would have to take action. And whoever this biker bastard was, he'd learn you couldn't mess with a respectable businessman without consequences. The interview aired Friday evening. By Saturday morning, Grind's world had collapsed completely. Jax watched Grind's interview from his office, Clara working at the desk next to him while Toby played in a portable playpen. The baby had taken to mansion life remarkably well, possibly because everyone who visited brought him new toys. And these criminals showed up with 20 motorcycles, Grind was saying on screen, doing his best impression of a frightened victim. They threatened me, intimidated me, and helped this tenant illegally remove property. Jax muted it. He just made a mistake. What mistake? Clara asked. He went public. Now I don't have to be subtle. Jax picked up his phone and started making calls. The first call went to his legal team. That interview Grind did. I want a defamation suit filed Monday morning. We'll need to establish that the Obsidian Kings MC is a legitimate business organization, that we violated no laws, and that his claims constitute libel. Pursue maximum damages. The second call went to his financial advisor. Alastair Grind. I want everything he owns. Find out who holds his mortgages, who his creditors are, what assets are vulnerable. I want a complete acquisition strategy by Monday. The third call went to Tiny. How'd you like to own some rental properties? By Monday morning, Jax's team had moved with devastating efficiency. It turned out Grind's mortgages were held by 3 different banks, all of which were happy to sell the performing loans to Sterling Holdings, LLC. Jax bought all 5 mortgages at a slight premium, which the banks appreciated. Then he exercised the acceleration clauses, perfectly legal provisions that allowed the lender to demand immediate full repayment if the property's value was threatened. Those building code violations? They threatened the property values. Jax's lawyers sent certified letters demanding immediate repayment of all 5 mortgages. Total amount due, $2.3 million. Grind didn't have $2.3 million. Simultaneously, the class action lawsuit gained traction. The law firm Jax had quietly retained, through several layers of shell companies to maintain his anonymity, filed expanded claims including fraud, breach of warranty of habitability, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. They requested punitive damages. The city attorney's office, responding to the building inspector's recommendations, launched an investigation into Grind's business practices. They discovered that Grind had been claiming significantly less rental income on his taxes than he actually collected, classic tax evasion. The IRS was notified. Grind's remaining tenants, learning about the violations and the lawsuit, began withholding rent and demanding repairs. Some simply moved out. The rental income that serviced Grind's debt disappeared overnight. On Wednesday, Jax made his final move. He had Tiny, who owned several legitimate businesses and had perfect credit, make an offer on Grind's properties. The offer was generous, market value minus the cost of required repairs. Grind could accept and walk away with enough money to cover his debts, or he could refuse and face foreclosure. Grind, backed into a corner, accepted. By Friday, exactly 1 week after his television interview, Alastair Grind had lost every property he owned. The sale proceeds went entirely to paying off debts and legal settlements. He walked away with nothing. But Jax wasn't done. "There's one more property," he told Clara, who'd been watching the systematic dismantling with a mix of awe and concern. Grind's personal residence. A condo in the Harbor District. He owns it outright. "I can't touch it through debt acceleration." "Then let it go," Clara said. "He's lost everything else." "That's enough, isn't it?" "No." Jax's expression was hard. He kicked a sick baby into the rain. He needs to understand what that feels like. He made one more call. Grind's condo was in a building with an HOA. That HOA had been struggling financially due to necessary repairs that owners had voted down to save money. The building needed a new roof, updated elevators, and parking structure repairs. Total cost, for $1 million, to be split among 200 units. Jax bought 30 units in the building. All of them empty, all purchased at above-market rates from owners happy to escape the coming assessment. Then he called for an emergency HOA meeting and voted for all necessary repairs. The assessment passed. Each unit owner owed $20,000. Grind couldn't pay. The HOA put a lien on his condo. When he still couldn't pay, they foreclosed. Jax bought the condo at the foreclosure auction. On a sunny Tuesday afternoon, exactly 3 weeks after kicking Clara and Toby into the rain, Alastair Grind received an eviction notice for his own home. He had 72 hours to vacate. The person delivering the notice was Tiny, who smiled pleasantly and said, "This is business, not charity. I'm sure you understand." The day of Grind's eviction was beautiful, clear skies, warm sun, a perfect spring afternoon. Jax suggested a motorcycle ride, and Clara agreed, leaving Toby with Reaper's wife, who ran a daycare and had volunteered to babysit. They rode through the city on Jax's bike, Clara holding on behind him, and ended up on Harbor Street just as the movers were carrying Grind's belongings out of the building. It was an exact mirror of the scene 3 weeks earlier, a man standing on the sidewalk, looking lost and desperate, surrounded by his possessions. Except this man wore an expensive suit and had no sympathy from passers-by. Jax killed the engine. They sat on the bike, watching. Grind saw them. Recognition flashed across his face, followed by rage, then fear, then something that might have been understanding. He walked over, his movements slow, defeated. "You," he said. "You did this." "I bought some properties," Jax replied evenly. "Made some investments. All perfectly legal. You destroyed me." "No. You destroyed yourself. You built a business on exploiting vulnerable people, cutting corners, and maximizing profit at the expense of human decency. I just expedited the consequences." Grind looked at Clara. "This is because of you." "No," Jax said, his voice going cold. "This is because of you. She was just the final straw. How many people have you evicted over the years? How many families did you throw out? How many sick kids, elderly people, disabled folks did you show no mercy to?" Grind had no answer. "Here's the thing about being a landlord," Jax continued. "You have power over people's basic need for shelter. You can use that power to help people or hurt people. You chose to hurt them. You chose profit over compassion every single time. So when someone with more power than you showed up and applied your own logic to you, this is business, not charity. You got to experience what all those people felt. I'll be homeless, Grind whispered. Probably not. You've got savings, right? Family, friends, credit cards, all those safety nets that the people you evicted didn't have. Jack started his bike. But if you do end up on the street, there are shelters, social services, resources. Of course, those resources are overwhelmed and underfunded, partly because people like you keep voting against housing assistance to save on taxes. So good luck with that. He looked at Clara. You ready? She nodded, but then paused. She looked at Grind, really looked at him, saw the fear, the desperation, the sudden understanding of how precarious everything was. There's a tenant rights organization on 5th Street, she said quietly. They help people facing housing insecurity. You should call them. They helped me before I met Jax. Grind stared at her. Why would you tell me that? Because someone should have told you a long time ago that your tenants were human beings. Maybe if you have to ask for help, you'll remember that. She paused. And because being cruel and revenge just makes you the same as the person who was cruel first. I don't want to be like you. She wrapped her arms around Jax's waist, and they rode away, leaving Grind standing among his possessions. That was generous, Jax said when they stopped at a red light. He's not worth my anger anymore, Clara replied. He lost everything. That's enough revenge for me. And if it's not enough for me, then I'll remind you that you're better than he is. And being better means knowing when to stop. Jax was quiet for a moment, then said, Reaper's wife asked if we needed regular babysitting. I said I'd check with you. Thought maybe you'd want some time to yourself, or we could. I don't know. Have dinner. As adults. Without a baby present. Clara smiled against his back. Jackson Sterling, are you asking me on a date? Maybe. Is that weird? Given that you're living in my house and working for my company. Extremely weird. But I'd like that. The light turned green. Jax accelerated, and they rode back toward the glass fortress on the hill, leaving the past behind them. 6 months later, Clara stood in the kitchen of what she'd stopped thinking of as Jax's house and started thinking of as home. She was reviewing research for Sterling Holdings, a report on sustainable housing initiatives, while Toby played in his portable gate, building block towers and knocking them down with delighted shrieks. The former Grind properties had been completely renovated and were now operating as affordable housing, managed by a nonprofit Jax had founded. The tenants from the class action lawsuit had all received settlements and priority placement in the new units. Several had sent Clara thank you cards, which she'd pinned to a board in her office. Grind himself had disappeared from the city. Last anyone heard, he'd moved to another state and taken a job in property management. Maybe he'd learned something. Maybe not. Either way, he was no longer Clara's problem. The Obsidian Kings had fully adopted Toby as their unofficial mascot. The baby had more uncles than any child in history. Snake taught him to play drums, much to everyone's auditory dismay. Tiny made him organic baby food. Reaper's kids considered him their baby cousin. And Jax came home every evening and asked about her day. He played with Toby before bed. He still made her perfect cappuccinos every morning. They'd gone on actual dates, to restaurants, to movies, to a weekend trip up the coast that Reaper's wife had eagerly agreed to babysit for. They hadn't defined what they were. Neither of them seemed to need to. It was enough to be together, to build this strange, unexpected family. Hey! Jax appeared in the kitchen, back from a meeting with City Council about a new affordable housing development. How's the research going? Good. I found some interesting models from Seattle. Want to review them? Later. He kissed her forehead, then scooped up Toby, who squealed with joy. Right now, I want to talk about something else. Clara's heart rate picked up. Okay. I've been thinking about the house. What about it? It's too big for one person. Even for 2 people and a baby. It was designed for a family. He paused, choosing words carefully. I bought it as an investment, but I've been living in it like a bachelor pad. And now that you're here, it feels like it's finally being used the way it was meant to be. Jax, let me finish. I know this situation is weird. I know we haven't labeled it. I know you might want your own place eventually, and if you do, I'll help you find it. But, he looked at her directly. I don't want you to go. I want this. You, Toby, the family dinners, the chaos, all of it. I want to make this permanent. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Permanent how? However you want. Move in officially. Let me adopt Toby. Get married. Or just keep doing what we're doing, but with the understanding that this is your home, not a temporary stop. I'm flexible on the details. I just need you to know that I'm all in. Toby chose that moment to grab Jax's nose and laugh. Jax smiled at him, then back at Clara. What do you say? Clara thought about the eviction, the rain, the desperation. She thought about Jax appearing like some kind of avenging angel on a motorcycle. She thought about how this strange biker had given her not just shelter, but a home. Not just a job, but purpose. Not just help, but family. She thought about how far she'd come from that curb in the rain. I say yes, she said. To all of it. The official move-in, the adoption, the marriage, the whole thing. Yes. Jax's smile was the warmest she'd ever seen. He kissed her, a real kiss, deep and promising, while Toby giggled between them. From the doorway, Tiny cleared his throat. Boss, the crew's here for dinner. Should I tell them to come back? Let them in, Jax said, not taking his eyes off Clara. It's family dinner night. And it was. The Obsidian Kings filed in, carrying food and beer and gifts for Toby. They filled the massive house with noise and laughter, and the kind of chaotic warmth that made a building into a home. Snake proposed a toast. To Clara, who upgraded from a slumlord to a king. Everyone laughed. Clara looked around at her unlikely family, bikers and babies, leather and luxury, all mixed together in beautiful chaos. Jax wrapped his arm around her waist and whispered, "Thank you." For what? For letting me help. For giving me a reason to use this place the way it was meant to be used. For making me remember that money's not worth anything if you don't use it to make the world better. Thank you for stopping, Clara said. For seeing us in the rain and deciding to do something about it. Always, Jax promised. I'll always stop for people who need help. And he did. The Obsidian Kings became known throughout the city for their advocacy work, protecting tenants, supporting affordable housing, standing up for vulnerable people. They still looked dangerous. They still rode loud motorcycles and wore leather cuts. But now, people knew the truth. Sometimes angels ride Harleys. And sometimes the best revenge isn't hurting the person who hurt you. It's building something so beautiful from the ashes that they can see exactly what they destroyed and exactly what they'll never have.